I accidentally stole the youth group key, so I came to get my computer set up and realized I had the keys in my pocket. And I was managed to run home, get her the keys, and make it back here on time for the talk. So we're members of St. Justin Martyr, and it's important that you would know that we live right across the street from the parish. So who lives across the street here? Do you guys know? You know, like the families that are all right here. Like, we are that family at St. Justin Martyr. So we bought our house from a 90-year-old woman whose children could not get her to move out of the house because she wanted to go to a good Catholic family that was going to send their kids to school and be involved in the parish. And it was kind of an accident how we got it. It was really a God moment and a providential moment. And that's a story for another time. But for this story, it's important that you know that we live directly across the street from the parish. About 7 years ago, I want to say, of course now my clicker's not going to work. About 7 years ago, let's try this again. There we go, okay. About 7 years ago, my kids come running down the steps of our house. And they look out the front window, which overlooks the front lawn of the parish. And they said, "Oh my gosh, Mom and Dad, there's something going on in church today. It's the Easter egg hunt for St. Justin Martyr. And let's get dressed, let's get ready to go. And are we going?" And I turned to the kids like a good dad and I said, "Kids, I have some bad news. Your mom forgot to sign you up." I threw her right under the bus. Sorry guys, no mercy. But we had forgotten to sign up for the parish Easter egg hunt. And again, this was a big deal. At this point I had 3 kids. And 4 now, 3 then. And it was very clear, like good Catholic marketing. It was very clear. No late registrations. We don't want you, right? Do not sign up late. That was on the sign, it was on the flyer, it was on all the stuff. No late registrations. Which was really a shame because I wanted to spend, $40 for my family to have like mediocre egg casserole and see this Easter bunny dressed in a dingy, maybe not quite white anymore, Easter bunny costume. We were really excited about it. So like a good millennial that I am, after I got done apologizing to my wife for throwing her under the bus, like a good millennial, I got on my phone and I Googled Easter egg hunt, South County. Right, because that's kind of like the area we would gravitate towards. So we'd figure out where's another Easter egg hunt in South County we can go to. We're 2 weeks out before Easter. Up on the phone pops up Canaan Baptist Church. Like this is #1 search result. Canaan Baptist Church. Helicopter Easter egg hunt next Saturday. We said, "Guys, don't worry. We've got other plans for today. We're going to go do something fun." We distracted them all day. But we are signed up for an Easter egg hunt next Saturday, the week before Easter. So we sign up online, get the email. We are so excited for you to come to this Easter egg hunt at Canaan Baptist Church. We cannot wait for you to be at our church. We can't wait for you to meet Jesus. We will see you next Saturday. Here's all the details you need to know. You are welcome here. Come as you are. Maybe even come late, right? Come as you are. So next Saturday rolls around. Kids are excited. Helicopter Easter egg hunt. What is that? They dropped Easter eggs from a helicopter. They wrap them in tape. They have this huge field that's blocked off. They don't drop them on top of the kids' heads. That could get a little messy, They block off this whole field, and they tape the eggs, and they drop them, and then the kids run out and go around, and the helicopter, flies away, and then they clear the field. They do it again. The helicopter comes back, and the kids run out and get all the. It's a pretty intense kind of thing, right? So we are anxiously trying to figure out what this helicopter Easter egg hunt is going to be and what it's going to look like. So we're pulling down Baumgartner Road, trying to figure out where exactly we're going, and all of a sudden it was very obvious where we're going. There was an army of people in orange t-shirts there to welcome us and greet us. So we get down to the corner and say, "Hey, our parking lot is closed," because it's basically like a parish festival that we're doing for this Easter egg hunt. And we want you to go down the street, park in the overflow lot, and you'll get more directions there. We are so excited you're here. We can't wait for you to meet Jesus here at Canaan Baptist Church. We love you. We'll just come as you are. We're so glad you're here. Great. So we park in the overflow lot, and there's, a good 5 or 10 people wearing their orange t-shirts, Canaan Baptist Church there. And we get into the parking lot, and what do we hear? "Oh my gosh, we are so glad that you guys are here at Canaan Baptist Church. We love you. We just want you to know that Jesus loves you, and we want you here at our church. And we want you to meet Jesus today. But we don't want you to meet him quite yet, so don't cross the street here. Go down to the crosswalk where the police have it blocked off. Cross nice and safe so no one has any accidents today, okay? Great. Get to the crosswalk. We are so glad you are here. We love you. Jesus loves you. Can't wait for you to meet Jesus. Go register at the table. We get to the registration table. We are so glad you guys are here. Meanwhile, my Catholic parish is over here being like, please don't come. We would rather you not show up. It's going to be a lot harder for us if you do. Now, if you met my kids, that might be true. You know, they're wild. They're wild. So we get that message again and again. We get to registration. We start playing the games all around Canaan Baptist Church. It's like every little parish festival or picnic, right? They've got the booths with like the ring toss set up and some different carnival-style games and some different things. They've got inflatables all throughout. Everyone's wearing their orange shirt and they all have this same basic message, right? They were on message all day long. We get to the inflatables and my kids are in line to jump in the bounce house. And they have high school kids working the inflatables. That checks out. It makes sense, right? Get the youth group kids, volunteer, and put them to work. And we get to the inflatables, and the kids, the 16, 15-year-old kid working the inflatable goes, "Hey, kids, how many of you guys go to church on Sunday?" And this big community outreach event at this church, about half the kids in line raise their hand. Kind of a low number if you really think about it. You would expect it might have been maybe more, right? But half the kids raise their hand. Because this event is reaching people, not just who already go to the church or members of their community, it's reaching out into the community like they had envisioned it to do. So how many of you guys go to church? About half people raise their hand. And the kid says, again, 15-year-old, "Guys, here at Canaan Baptist Church, we have the best children's ministry ever. We study the Bible. We get to know Jesus. We have fun. We have games. And I want you to tell your parents to bring you back every week to our children's ministry at Canaan Baptist Church." Here I am. I'm like, man, this kid's a better evangelist than I am. 15 years old, you know, standing in line working the inflatables. Like, unbelievable. Message was on point. They have, music going over the speakers and a big stage set up. And, there's different announcements going on. Hey, we're going to have a message from our pastor in a few minutes. Get ready, we'll get you all up here. So the pastor gets up and says, "All right, I want all the kids to come to the stage." And all the kids, "We have a present for you." All the kids are at the stage, and they've got these huge baskets of Easter eggs on the front of the stage. "Everyone take an Easter egg for everyone in your family." So everyone gets an Easter egg. Open it up, and there's a little bracelet in there, a color-coded bracelet. It has 5 different colors on it. And a little insert in it too about what they're about. And the pastor gets up on the stage and starts telling us what each of the colors are. And he walked us through what was a gospel presentation. Using like the more Protestant version often is like the Romans road, right? God created everyone, all were created, all fall short of the righteousness of God, and all redeemed. So he goes walking us through this gospel presentation based on the book of Romans and telling us what each color on the bracelet stands for. He says, here at Canaan Baptist Church, we just want you to know that God has a plan for your life. And maybe you're not living up to that plan right now. Maybe you don't feel God's love or know God's love, or who knows what brought you here today. Maybe it's the helicopter that's going to be here in 5 minutes and all the kids go crazy and get excited about the helicopter, right? But even more exciting than that helicopter is the love of Jesus, which has transformed my life, has transformed the lives of people here who serve. And we know He can transform your life too. And next Sunday is Easter Sunday. And we want you to come as you are. I don't care if you show up wearing your pajamas. I don't care if you show up wearing shorts and a t-shirt. I don't care if you come wearing a tuxedo. We want you to come worship with us at Canaan Baptist Church because we love you. Because Jesus loved you first. We love Jesus and we want to follow Him. We want to be like Him. I'm like a mess in the background. Like my wife and I are like in tears because we had a rough go at that point, right? This is Zeke here. He's kind of cute. He was a preemie. He was a super preemie. He was. My wife's water broke at 21 weeks, right? Which was like 3 weeks before viability for the most part. He was in the hospital. She was in the hospital on bed rest for 6 weeks before he was born. He was 2 pounds 15 ounces. He was in the hospital for over 4 months. Like we were tired, right? We had a lot going on. It was just heavy. Life had been heavy. And our church, which was good, our church had done a good job of lifting us up, and we didn't cook for 4 or 5 months, right? I probably put on a good 20 pounds that year, because all the food was so good that people were taking care of us. But when that moment where we needed just a come as you are, and you're welcome here, and we love you, it was no late registrations welcome. So just the difference, right, in that message, in that attitude. I was a mess, because it was just such a powerful message. So the rest of the day was great. The pastor said, if you need a Bible, we have free Bibles over here. If you want to get signed up for our ministries, please go ahead and sign up. And my wife and I left, and we were just talking about how powerful and amazing this day was. And then, 10 minutes after we leave, we get an email from the church, right? Another message. We are so glad you joined us. Please click this link to RSVP for Easter. They didn't need you to RSVP. They wanted you to commit. They wanted you to be there. Click if you want more information. Click if you want someone from the church to reach out to you and follow up to you. So I clicked, of course. Like the good, curious Catholic that I was, I just wanted to know more what they did. And what I ended up doing was I told them who I was. I told them I wasn't going to convert, to be Baptist. Sorry, they weren't going to get me. But I said I would love to meet with your pastor and talk about what this day was, because it was beautiful, and we as Catholics have so much to learn. So I called the pastor. We got together. We talked a little bit, and I said, how in the world? I can't even imagine a Catholic event like that. Think of your parish picnic, right? I think of I grew up in Seven Holy Founders. Anyone Seven Holy Founders, maybe? Okay. They have a pretty raging parish picnic, right? Like once the sun goes down, the band goes up and the beer sales go up, and it's a different kind of event, right? In my Catholic imagination, I'm having a hard time picturing how a Catholic church could do something like this. I know it's possible. I know they could, but is there any desire, any capacity for a Catholic church to proclaim and invite the way that this Baptist church did? I think we can do it. I think it's possible. And I love that story, and I share that story because I think that we need to start thinking differently about who we are and our identity as the members of the church, as the people of the church, as really the leaders of the church, right? And this is for pastors too. Father Gresh isn't here, so I'll throw him under the bus. No, he's heard that story before. He actually sat in on an evangelization class I taught for priests. And so you can ask him about it later. He's heard that story. So I asked him, and I said, how did you guys pull that off? And the pastor said, everyone in our church community knows that this event is not for us. That it's not for our church community. That it exists for the sake of the people in the neighborhood, exists for the sake of the people we're trying to draw in, and for the people who need the love and the healing and the mercy of Jesus Christ. And because our people are convicted that the world is crying out for Jesus, we want to do everything we can to bring him to people, to invite people in, to make them feel comfortable, to be willing to take that first step towards their faith. So we knew. So that team of 100, and I'm probably underestimating, it's probably well over 100 volunteers in the orange shirts were you guys, right? It was the people who would show up for a talk about the Kerygma on a Wednesday night. The faithful dedicated who are convicted that Jesus matters. That Jesus can make a difference in people's lives now and for eternity. In the joy of the gospel, I had another good picture, right? So this is at the Easter egg hunt, in action. They were running around. There's the helicopter dropping Easter eggs. You can see some orange shirts sprinkled in there, right? Pretty wild stuff. But in the joy of the gospel, and this is one of the things we talked about a lot in All Things New, there's this great quote. How many of you guys came to Evangelization 101? Okay, so I'll try to use all the same material, right? Not total repeat. But Pope Francis is really continuing this mission of the church ever since, even before the Second Vatican Council, honestly, to help the church be ready to engage the world, to go out to the world, not just to sit here with our own doors open, waiting for people to come to us. And he talks about a missionary transformation. That our very identity as a church would become missionary. There's a missionary impulse capable of transforming everything so that our customs, structures, times, ways of doing things, language can be suited for evangelization rather than our own self-preservation. Now, I know there was a rumor going around that they were going to turn St. Gerard Magella into a Jimmy John's, right, instead of a church. No, did you guys hear that one?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, ask Father Gresh about it. Can you please all ask Father Gresh if there was ever a plan to turn St. Gerard into a Jimmy John's? He'll love it. I promise. You guys made the cut. You're still here. My parish, still here, right? But we're not off the hook. Because we have a world that is crying out for the love of Jesus. We have people who are leading lives of quiet desperation, who are sad and don't want to admit it, or are searching for meaning and purpose in their lives. And we have the greatest gift. We have the gift of faith. We have the gift of Jesus in the Eucharist, who gives himself to us. And we need to learn how not just to keep it for ourselves and fight each other in our neighboring parishes so our doors don't close, and maybe theirs do. We want every Catholic church to grow and to flourish. So just because we made the cut, or you made the cut, right, doesn't mean that we're not called to have a radical transformation of our identity as a parish. Do you see yourselves as a parish on mission? As a parish with a strong mission? That you are responsible to evangelize the people who live in your parish boundaries. You are supposed to be salt and light in this neighborhood, in this community, to be a unique vehicle to proclaim the gospel, to invite people in, to help them understand the things that might hold them back from meeting Jesus in a new and profound way. That is your unique mission. And it has to be an identity. It can't just be something we do on the weekends. It can't just be like, well, I knocked on a door, right? But when we all are committed to doing it, we do it, we're much more likely to do it. There was a study done a few years back in a book I read called Spiritual Multiplication in the Real World. Spiritual multiplication is this idea of like a fruitfulness mentality in ministry, right? It's not just I go and get you, but if I go and get you and bring you to church, do you understand that your job is to go get someone else? When you go get that person, do they understand that their job is to go and get someone else, right? It's go get two people. And if they go get two people, it's like a Catholic pyramid scheme, right? Like this idea of spiritual multiplication, that we're fruitful. And what they did was, it was a group like Focus. Anyone know Focus, right? They send missionaries to college campuses. Or Campus Crusade for Christ, or Navigators, or universities. One of those non-denominational groups that send people out. And they did a study. They wanted to find out, why are some of our alumni, missionary alumni, why are some of them successful when they leave our program in evangelization, and other ones are not? Right? You're never going to bat 1,000. You're going to have the perfect success rate. But why are some people successful when they leave and other people struggle? And what they found was that the strongest correlation was not to the amount or type of training that people had had. And that makes sense, right? Because the people on staff had all had the exact same training for the most part, right? They went through the same curriculum, they had run the same programs, they had done the same thing when they were on campus with college students. When they went to their church communities, some of them were fruitful and some of them were not. So what was the strongest correlation? It was accountability. It was community. It was identity, right? What they found was that people, and again, this like sounds like obvious, like duh. What they found was that people who were part of evangelizing communities were successful individual evangelists. All right, it's that hot coal syndrome. You can't do it on your own, right? We read in the Gospel of John that we can do nothing apart from him. And we say plugged in with him, and when everyone says plugged in with him on the same mission to go out and make disciples, to be disciples who make disciples, we're more likely to do that. Because when we have the same vision, the same mindset, the same idea, we're much more likely to look around at the people next to us, the people around us, and say, how's it going? You said this is who you wanted to be. You said this is what you wanted to do. Are you doing it? Are you making disciples? I mean, you guys, I work in the church, right? Which is interesting sometimes. I've worked in the church full time for the last 15 years. 16 of the last 17 years. I've worked in the church full time. When I was I had a job in sales for 1 year. That job, I had a part-time job at a church. So I've never gotten away from it all the way. But when you work in a business, what you measure is what people do, right? If a business has a metric and not measuring it, no one works on that. But if you have accountability and you have goals and you have identity and a corporate culture, that's what gets worked on. So as Catholics, we have to set and determine what is going to determine our culture, our identity. What's going to be our metrics of success. And this accountability is not a top-down accountability. Sure, the pastor has to have a vision for evangelization. The archbishop has to have a vision for evangelization. The pope has to have, right? It's got to come top-down to some extent. But real, authentic accountability about our identity as Catholic evangelists, as missionary disciples, comes from internal, and it comes from looking around at one another and lifting each other up and pushing each other forward on that mission. We have to reclaim our identity as Catholics on mission. So we'll talk a little bit more about the message, the Kerygma, at the end. And I'm going to talk, super fast so I get it all in. I can't help myself. I listen to a lot of podcasts. And I listen to them at like time and a half speed or audiobooks and stuff like that too. And I think it's like worn off on me that like I think everyone talks in time and a half speed all the time. So sometimes I have to do the Father Mike Schmitz thing where he's like, okay, take a breath, slow down. But no, we have a lot to cover, but I think we can do it. We'll have some time for some questions and discussion at the end as well. But I just wanted to point out and just remind each of you, if you want to evangelize, do you guys want to evangelize? Does everyone here want to evangelize? You want to grow the church, bring people to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
That's good. If not, come see me afterwards. We'll talk, or maybe by the end you'll be there. But the first thing we have to start when we go to evangelize is me. We have to look in the mirror first. We have to rekindle in ourselves the ardor of apostolic preaching, in ourselves the burning conviction of St. Paul, woe to me if I don't preach the gospel. So we don't start with other people, we start with being on fire. St. Bernard of Clairvaux has a great quote. It's quoted in a little book on the spiritual life called The Soul of the Apostolate. Right? Apostolate being rooted in the root word apostle, right? Sent, one who is sent out on mission, right, with the authority of Christ. And the soul of the apostolate is our prayer life. And he talks about channels versus reservoirs. A channel just fills up and carries something to where it's going, but doesn't have a deep well from what it draws from. And a reservoir is a deep basin that's constantly overflowing. In our prayer life, we have to be full. And if you're not full in your own prayer life, you can't expect to go help someone else be fruitful in their prayer life and their conversion as well. You can't give what you don't have. And if the Lord is not pouring out His grace abundantly in your own life, and again, it doesn't mean it's always easy. It's not always sunshine and lollipops and roses in your spiritual life or personal life. But if you don't see the love of God in your own life moving and acting and changing you, then you're going to have a hard time helping introduce someone to the Holy Spirit to help them do that in their life as well. So we always have to start with ourselves. And again, this duty to evangelize is not left to specialists. It's not left to people like me who have the word evangelization in their job title, which is good because there's not very many of me in the world who have evangelization in their job title. There's 2 other people at the diocese. There's 4 other people in parishes. There's just not a lot of people who are professional evangelists, right? But it's the responsibility of all the people of God. It is not your pastor and your associate pastor's job to evangelize only. They have to lead us in that, but it's our job as well. All the people of God by our baptism. We're going to skip that. We're going to skip that. And at this moment right now, this is again Pope John Paul II, who I have a big crush on. Because that my big conversion, my big aha moment came when he came in St. Louis in 1999. Said that it's the moment right now to commit all of our energies to a new evangelization, right? What's new about this new evangelization? We have to proclaim Christ to all peoples. But really, one of the things that's new about the new evangelization, or this unique moment in time in evangelization, is that we're proclaiming Christ to people who have already heard Christ proclaimed in some way, shape, or form. We're not going out to a tribe of people who have never heard the name of Jesus and telling them for the first time ever about who Jesus is. We're trying to reclaim an identity as a culture. Our own identity of what it means to be Catholic, right? Evangelization is a grace and vocation proper to the church, that we exist to evangelize. Christ came and established the church to be the means of the gift of grace to the world. And our job as Catholics is to help God's grace and love spread everywhere. And that's what it means to evangelize, to bring God's love into every single situation, to convert individuals and society by the divine power of the gospel itself. Sometimes people get those things like in tension with one another. Because we want to work to promote the social order sometimes. We want to work through our laws and social justice and make the world a more ordered place. And then other people say, well, I just want people to love Jesus. And I'm not going to worry about all that stuff. And as Catholics, we have to do it all, and we have to do both. We look at people who have had conversions, who are following radically Jesus Christ in a profound way in their life, are going to go out, and they can't help but go order the world in a more just, in a more humane way, right? To order society. So we understand that as we convert individuals, they go out to convert society as well. And if we don't see a societal impact on our evangelization efforts, then we're probably, as a church, not living up to our own full calling of what it means. And again, Pope Paul VI, this is quoting him, it says, there's no evangelization if the name, teaching, life, promises, and mystery of the kingdom of Jesus are not proclaimed. Right? That's what that kerygma is. And we'll get to more kerygma as we go. So the new evangelization is new to whom it's going to, with new ardor, new passion, new methods, and new expression. It needs to look different for this new reality, this new world that we're living in. And there's just a simple fundamental truth that the way we're going to evangelize is that we have to be disciples who are convicted enough to go out and make disciples. That there's no perfect program. There is no DVD you can pop in, and when someone watches it, out pops a disciple. There's no form.org program or YouTube link or podcast or fill in the blank that you can give to someone and they'll become a disciple on their own. That really it's disciples going out to share life, to share love, to share Jesus, and that's how disciples are made, right? The Great Commission of Jesus Christ says, go therefore and make disciples. Those are action words, right? Go and make. Two of my favorite words, go and make. And then really what it's about calling people to conversion. And again, for whatever reason, and some of you might have heard this before, but for whatever reason, sometimes conversion is something we're just really uncomfortable with talking about. Because we're talking about conversion, it means that we're telling people that in their lives that they're doing something wrong, that we're making a judgment statement or on the values of how they live their life, right? But I love the way the Catechism talks about conversion. It says conversion is a radical reorientation of our life towards Christ, right? Jesus comes and says, repent and believe in the gospel. That repentance, that conversion, the same root word, talks about a radical reorientation of our life towards Christ. And sometimes to do that, we have to help people see the things and the directions, the areas where they are oriented to, and the ways they're walking away from Jesus. But we don't judge. We don't convict people. It's the Holy Spirit who causes that conversion. So it's sometimes our job to help people see the difference between where they're headed and where they're called, or help them to see Jesus. And if your eyes are focused on Jesus, the other stuff can start to fall away over time. So I want to share with you kind of a 4-part paradigm, of how I like to talk about the basics of what we need to know in order to go out and evangelize. And, some people really like mnemonic devices or things that can help you remember things really easily. So I've got 4 M's for you. 4 M's. The first M is the moment. We have to recognize the moment that we are living in history. Again, Pope Francis, others have had this comment that we're not living in the age of change where things just change rapidly, like we are living in that too. We're not simply living in an age of change, but it's really the change of an age. That this is one of those hinge moments in history that really is radically different. Think about how different life is right now than it was even just 100 years ago, or 50 years ago, or, pick your number, whatever you want it to be, right? Even before 2008, when your iPhone came out for the first time. Life is actually radically different in many ways. And to recognize and understand the moment we're living in and the symptoms of the culture that we're living in is radically important. There's a great book called From Christendom to Apostolic Mission. Has anyone ever heard of it or read it, perhaps? Okay. We have a podcast in the Archdiocese called Go and Make. Highly recommend you all check it out. We just did an episode last week kind of talking about this book. So if you want a deeper dive on this, we interviewed Father Paul Hazing, who's the rector of the seminary, who is about as good as it gets, about this topic as well. But we have to, what the starting assumptions that we're trying to figure out and reference in this book are, and he struck a nerve, I think, with people in the church, is that the church we're living in right now is built for a reality that doesn't exist. This idea of Christendom, and Christendom can simply be defined as the state of the culture being predominantly Christian in structure and values and expression. And we still have a lot of Christendom in our society, or the state of most of the world being Christian, or culture being Christian. And we still have a fair amount of it, right? Like our law system is oftentimes built around the idea of the Ten Commandments, right? And that we're so ingrained in these law structures and social systems, sometimes we don't realize how pervasive the gospel can be within those. We don't understand always just how Christian our culture is. But we also can recognize very easily that it's starting to drift, right? That we have a hard time calling truth right now. We have a hard time admitting that truth exists right now, right? Moral relativism, the idea that what's true for you is good for you, and what's good for me is good for me, and I can't tell you what's wrong for you. That's everywhere in our culture. And if you don't believe me, go be a missionary for 4 years on college campuses, right? Moral relativism is the predominant worldview for so many people. We don't believe in truth oftentimes. So we have this culture in our parishes and in the church, and it's our own kind of operative mentality, that we assume that our institutions are going to help people meet Jesus, right? That our Catholic schools and hospitals and our programs at our parish, which are all lovely and good things, that they're going to really reach people and help them understand the heart of the gospel message. But the reality is that's starting to shift radically. And that we can't count on those institutions because we haven't had disciples who are making disciples. That maybe we haven't passed on the faith as intentionally as we need to be prepared to enter into this new age and new world with all of its crazy ideas. And then in the early time of the apostles, they received the faith from Jesus Christ, and no one in the world was Christian. Right? What are the resources of the early church? And it says this in the book. It says, how many bishops do we have? 12. Great. How many priests do we have? Also 12. How many churches do we have? None. How much money do we have? None. Right? They have nothing. They have absolutely nothing except the gospel that was given to them by Jesus. Right? The life and the witness, the Eucharist. And they went forth with the mindset that what they knew in the person of Jesus was what the world needed. And that the gospel mandate of Jesus to go and make disciples was an imperative that they couldn't ignore. And that they were literally willing to lay down their lives for that gospel message. And that's what shaped the world. That apostolic mentality is what shaped Christendom culture, right? It's how we became a Christian culture overall. And we have to understand that we have to try and reclaim that apostolic identity in our own church today because we can't rely on the structures, right? C.S. Lewis has this great quote in one of his works. He says, trying to evangelize in the world today is different than it was before. That when the apostles first went out to evangelize, to spread the good news, it was like wooing a young lover. right? There's like going out. You guys, remember what it was like. Remember when I first started dating my wife, right? It was all butterflies and rainbows, and everything was warm and fuzzy, and it felt good. And it was like you're just like romantically falling in love for the first time. And there's this innocence about it, right? There's beauty about it. You're just falling in love. But what we're trying to evangelize the world today is more like trying to win back a cynical divorcee. That it's people who have heard the gospel message and not maybe seen the gospel message lived. Or lived in a way that doesn't really feel like it matters very much. That people who have been hurt by the scandal of others. People who have been hurt by the inauthentic witness of others, by the personal relationships with others who claim to be Christian, maybe didn't live up to it all the way. So we have a world that's unconvinced that we are who we say we are. And we can't deny that like the priest scandals, the clergy scandals, and the bishop scandals, all the scandals of the church play into this, right? That as an institution, we've not always been very good at publicly being who we say we are. There's beautiful pockets of faith and hope along the way. But it's different. That same initial romance is not the same thing as this. We have to re-earn the trust of the world. And then we can't rely on our structures the way we were. We have to think differently about how we go out to the world. The good news is that every time that sociologists have predicted the demise of the church, the numbers are plummeting, there's no way the church survives. That article probably gets written every 10 years at least, right? The church is in such a decline in whatever country, it's never going to come back. But that's when the Holy Spirit seems to speak, right? The Holy Spirit spoke at the time of Jesus when the world was in chaos. And they sent Jesus Christ. And it changed the course of history. In France, in the 18th century, this generation of saints rise up again. The church is in decline. They went down from having 30,000 priests to having less than 5,000 priests in the country. There's no vocation, there's no hope. And the Holy Spirit rises up a generation of saints that go out and re-evangelizes France with St. Francis de Sales and his companions and other saints of France in that time. And they re-evangelize a culture that was seemingly lost. And every time in the church that hope seems to be lost, the Holy Spirit speaks. The next is the model, right? And this is really important, how we go out to evangelize. So the first M is understanding the moment. The second is the model. We talked about this a little bit in Evangelization 101. We'll have lots more resources on this over time, so I don't want to spend too much time on it too. But this is the root of the model, that it's only from a personal relationship with Jesus that we can be effective at evangelizing. So we have to be in love with Jesus. And as we go out in love with Jesus, we want to help people encounter Jesus, to grow in their relationship with Him, grow their love, their knowledge of Him, their readiness for mission, and then to go out and witness Him to others constantly, right? So we want to build a path of discipleship, both individually for people and in our parishes. Are our parishes good at helping people encounter Christ in a radical and profound way for the first time? I would argue that we are generally not. We might have a retreat program that's good at that. We might have one or two things, but overall it's not in our DNA as parishes to do this. So in order to do that, to help someone have an encounter, there's different thresholds of conversion, pre-evangelization, and really what it's rooted in is trust. Do people trust us enough individually to say yes to our invitation to meet Jesus? And again, there's other workshops and things we can talk about with that. But ultimately, all these steps are geared towards encounter. They're geared towards conversion, meeting Jesus and helping someone make a decision to follow Him, that renewed personal encounter with Jesus Christ. The next M I'm going to talk about is the method. The method of evangelization. How do we evangelize? So the moment, the model, now the method. Again, the method is, I'm looking at it. It's right here. It's you and I. It's not institutions. It's not structure. It's people willing to proclaim the gospel message of Jesus Christ. And every single member of the faithful is called to holiness, and we're called to mission. And I think in the last 60 years since the Second Vatican Council, we've actually done a really good job as a church overall in emphasizing our universal call to holiness. We've embraced that, I think, in a new way than, as I read about the history of the church and study it, that wasn't always there, right? It was just, obedience and duty was a big part of it. Now we really have called people to like closeness with Jesus, to understanding the scriptures, to a deeper prayer life. But sometimes we do it in a really selfish way where it's just for me. Right? We must have a Protestant ethic built into us in that, where it can be me and Jesus, and I want to be close to Jesus. But our holiness always has to call us to fruitfulness as well. It has to call us to be on mission, a mission to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. As we go out to do this, no two people's ministry can look the same or needs to look the same either. For the church, there's a diversity of ministry, but a unity of mission. That whether you're out there on the CYC field coaching third grade soccer like I do, or you're running the quilters, or you're running your parish picnic, or whatever it is, you might have a different looking ministry, but our one mission is the same. To help people meet Jesus, to help people follow Jesus and respond to Jesus in their lives. We're many parts, but one body. You have to acknowledge the part of the body that you are in your mission. That every Catholic has the right and the duty to work so that Jesus might be known. No one can stop you from evangelizing. And I love this, and I always tell this to the priests too when I work with them. That the duty of lay people to evangelize, to spread the good news, of you and I to do this, is so pressing because sometimes it's only through us that we can go out to the world, right? People aren't just going to always walk in the front door of our parish and say, can you tell me about Jesus? That doesn't happen very often. But we're out in our job, we're out in our whatever social scene that we're doing, we know different people. And that's where we can go be salt and light in the world. And that your activity in this is so important that without your work, the apostolate of pastors cannot be fully effective. That no matter how much good work our priests are doing from the pulpit, and the grace that they're offering us in the Eucharist and sacramental grace, like we can't do those things, right? They have a special, unique grace. But that grace is actually like fully activated in the world by us participating in our mission. And if you want to help Father be successful in his mission of love and mercy on the altar and in the confessional, that we have to be fully active in our mission to go out to the world to bring people to know Jesus Christ. And I always think that's really, really powerful. So what's the method? How do we do it? 2 verses. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2, some more alliteration, right? 2 Tim 2:2. What you've heard from me before many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. This is that principle of spiritual multiplication, right? Fruitfulness. So the simpler way to say it is this. You've heard this before. If you want to feed a man, I screwed it up. Give a man a fish, feed him for a day, right? Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime, right? Okay, that's great. If you want to solve world hunger, you have to teach him how to teach people to fish. That way it doesn't stop after two generations, right? Give a man a fish, feed him for a day. So, want to give someone spiritual food, feed him for a day. Great. But teach them how to teach. That there's a generational fruitfulness. That I'm giving away the gospel and it stops with you, that I failed to give you the full gospel. Because inherent in the gospel message is this fruitfulness and is this desire for the whole world to come to know Jesus. That if you've worked with someone and brought them to know Jesus, but they don't know their mission to share him, then they don't know Jesus yet, or the fullness of Jesus yet. It's imperative that we go out and evangelize. And then again, 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8. So deeply we cared for you that we wanted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our very selves. So again, sharing the gospel, sharing the Kerygma, the proclamation, right? We love you. Jesus loves you. He has a plan for you in your life, right? Sharing the gospel. But then also just sharing every part of your life with people. So when you share the gospel, they know you care, right? People don't know, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. Right? I think it's every kindergarten teacher's favorite thing to say, right? Maybe it was just like my mom and grandma told me a lot when I was young. You have to genuinely love one another. In their mess sometimes too. That's what this whole talk about synodality and listening in the church is right now too. It's about sharing life. And when we share life, we earn the authority, the relational authority, to go out and share the gospel with someone. But if I'm just some random, Joe Blow off the street, and I start preaching the gospel to people, that might affect a few people. But if I know you and love you and you trust me, and I say God has a bigger plan for you, that can really make an impact in someone's life. So that's what the method is. It's this idea of what we call relational ministry, incarnational evangelization. That we're following the model of Jesus, who became one of us, so that we might come to know the Father in a new and deeper way. My clicker died, I guess. And then the last one we want to talk about is this idea of the message, the kerygma. What is the gospel message? And again, I think as Catholics, when we think of kerygma, we think of preaching, we think of someone standing on a street corner telling you you're going to hell. Right? And that's not it. That's not quite what we're all called to do. But I think as Catholics, I think a lot of times we think that people are going to walk onto our property, they're going to come to our Catholic schools or be a part of our CYC or show up, and they're just going to know who we are and what we're about. And in a Christendom culture, that might have played. That might have worked, right? Or we were really good at it. I always think it's interesting, Monsignor Lou Meyer, who's like a legend of the CYC program, he said, our job is to keep kids in the shadow of the church. Right? In the shadow of the church. They want to keep kids, young people, close to the church. Because they knew that the families and the culture were doing a good job of bringing them inside of the church, right? So they're trying to keep them out of trouble. I don't think that paradigm works very well for us anymore. Because we have an awful lot of people who come really close to the church for Catholic school and CYC sports, the two things I like to pick on the most. But they don't come in the church anymore. And they don't understand the gospel message because they've never really heard it preached in a convincing way. So how do we as Catholics reclaim that gospel message? The people aren't going to learn by osmosis. They're not just going to pick up the message just from being around. So how do we, like that Canaan Baptist Church message on their Easter egg hunt, how do we start to incorporate the message of the saving power and love of Jesus Christ into everything we do? The last time I was in this room, it smelled a lot like fish. Right? It was a Saturday morning after a Friday night Lenten fish fry. When someone comes to your fish fry, do they hear the gospel? It's one thing to give them a flyer of like upcoming programs, and we don't even do that very well necessarily either. But do we have opportunities built into who we are and our identity as parishes, as Catholics, to actually preach the gospel? And it can't just happen at church, because guess who's not at church? The people who need to hear the gospel message. How do we begin to proclaim the gospel in our everyday lives? Since my clicker died, let me click a few. So kerygma is a Greek word. It means proclamation or preaching. But I'm going to skip ahead here. And I want to show you kind of two variations. Lots of possible slides here. A few different versions of this. Okay. So here is a basic configuration of the gospel message, the kerygma, the proclamation of the core beliefs of what the gospel is. Chris Stefanik has this breakdown. 5 parts. Creation. We were created by God out of love, for unity and union with Him. 2. Sin came into that relationship and broke that relationship with God. Sin cut us off from God. 3. Christ came to restore that relationship. We've all been offered this gift of redemption, but it requires action on our part. It's a free gift. We have to receive the gift. So Christ offers us redemption, but in order to receive it fully, we have to undergo and say yes and respond through this idea of conversion. And then 5, this is one some of our Protestant brothers and sisters miss out on a little bit as well. This idea of the kingdom. That we're living in the kingdom of God, that we believe that through the gift of the church and living the sacramental life of the church, we can stay close to Jesus Christ and receive His grace and strength for the journey. Right? It's just a very simple articulation of how you might be able to proclaim that core gospel message. Pope Francis talks about this in The Joy of the Gospel, and he says that this Kerygma is, we call it the first proclamation. And we call it first not only because it's something someone needs to hear before they're actually a Christian, right? If you haven't understood and accepted this message in your own life. But it's also first because it should have a primacy of place in every part of every one of our ministries as a church. That we can't assume that someone has heard and understands this core gospel message. So I think my challenge for you before we do maybe some question and answer here at the end as we start to wrap up would just be that Christ is calling you to speak. You know, I've done this shtick before, this rant before, that preach the gospel always, and if necessary, use words, is not something that St. Francis of Assisi ever said. It doesn't show up in his writing until 300 or 400 years after he dies. And St. Francis of Assisi was an itinerant preacher. He traveled the countryside proclaiming the love of God. But it's a scandal if we preach the gospel and don't live the gospel, which is why that quote resonates, right? Let my life be my witness. But recognizing the moment that we are in, that it's time to speak. That we can't assume that people that we know and love, the people who are trying to evangelize, we can't assume that they've heard the gospel presented in a real and meaningful way. I think of my own family. My older brother is a self-proclaimed agnostic / sometimes atheist. And we went to the same Catholic school growing up. We went to the same opportunities all along the way. And I've tried to have a lot of conversation with him, but I don't think he's ever heard the gospel in a really convincing way. Because he always shuts down that conversation and shuts off before it gets to that point. And so, talk about the pre-evangelization and earning the trust and creating the openness in people to hear that gospel message. It's the art of evangelization. It's more art than it is science. There's no formula to follow. But we're not very good at having this as part of the fabric of the DNA of who we are as Catholics. And that if someone only ever hears it one time, that really might not be enough, right? Good marketing tells you that it's on like the 8th or 9th time that your message finally starts to set in with someone. And if people aren't constantly hearing the reason we exist as a church is so that we might know and respond to the love of Jesus, who has profound mercy for each and every one of us, then I don't think we're going to be successful as a church. We could run all the best programs, we could have all the best technology and marketing and do all the things, but until it becomes just a regular habit for every single one of us as Catholics to find ways, again, not to beat someone over the head with truth. Sometimes we confuse evangelization and apologetics, right? The people have questions and hurdles about the Catholic faith they need to answer. That's apologetics, an intellectual argument. But real evangelization is helping to create that openness for someone to respond to what God's doing in their life. And sometimes the best way to start to preach the gospel is to start by asking people questions. What's God doing in your life? Do you believe that God has a plan for you? Do you think you're on that plan? Do you think you're following that plan? What more do you want out of your life? And that sometimes, if we want to help proclaim the gospel, we have to help people to ask the right questions and create the openings and opportunities for that gospel message as well. So I would end just by saying, if you don't know who you're going to do this with, right? The Lord is calling all of us to speak and to start speaking about what He's doing in our own lives and talk about our own personal testimony. Ask the Lord to put on your heart, come to Holy Hour, which we should all be praying if we want to be missionary disciples and evangelists. Come to Holy Hour and beg the Lord to put on your heart 3 people. 3 people that He's calling you to find a way to deepen your relationship with, to begin to preach and share the gospel. And as the Lord puts those people on your heart, they might be different than the people that you want to do it to, right? I would love to preach the gospel to my brother. But when I do it, or when we try and talk about it, we pretty much end up in a fist fight. It's happened multiple times. I'm not going to be the one to do it. I'm going to pray for him, for someone else to have that opportunity. So Lord, who are you putting in my life right now that you're asking me to be courageous and to share with? And I can think of 3. I got 2 guys in my parish and one of my other siblings who just has a 1-year-old. And when you have a kid, you start to see the world a little differently, right? I think there's an opening in her life where she's starting to ask the questions. Okay, so the Lord has put it on my heart. These 3 people. Now I can start to pray for the opportunity, pray for the moment, and pray for the courage to ask those questions and to start to speak the truth of the gospel into it. And we start to reclaim our identity as Catholics about the importance of that kerygma, of the core gospel message of the saving love and power of Jesus Christ. That is what can transform everything in our parish life. So I'm going to hit pause here. Maybe we can take a few questions or thoughts from you all before we wrap up our evening. Dan.
Where I used to work, we had a saying that said, if it's important, make it somebody's job.
Yeah.
And you said there's only a few people in the Archdiocese with the title of evangelization. So how is the Archdiocese going to help us and help our pastors to help us? I understand the lay people have to be involved, but we're not just going to go out and do it. We need something more than that.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, I always say my job shouldn't exist at the Archdiocese because it literally is everyone's job. Like, this is the mission of the church, so everything we do should be geared towards this. I always say that sometimes my job is to be the conscience in the room. Say, how is what we're talking about related to our one mission to make disciples? So we're encouraging pastors to hire someone on staff if they can to be the director of evangelization or coordinator of evangelization at a staff level. And we're also working on, all the programs that we do provide and things we do are created and written or resourced in this context. So we're talking about that path of discipleship that pastors know in their own evangelization plan where things fit. So really, we're creating the structure as best we can around it. And then maybe sometimes you have to name it too and have a committee or different people who can create that accountability about what that mission is. So not every parish can afford to do it, but a lot of them can.
Hi, I'm Matt. Everybody
Hi, Matt.
Here. I guess one of the presentation, and I'm glad that the Father and everybody's asked for this, it is from a lot of our experiences, the things that we used to be evangelism has been slowly but surely taken away from us. And some of us would like to bring some of that back. We used to have a committee of all the volunteer committees meeting on a regular basis, so we didn't trample over each other or confusion of what was going on where and stuff. And that's all been taken away. I'm just wondering, should we kind of phrase it that we would like to see one of these things come back? Or it's already been there, done that, now it's new?
No, I don't. Yeah, I think one of my catchphrases I'm really trying to make stick is, in the church we don't lack content, but we lack context. So it's like, you hear that, just keep saying it so it sticks, right? We have the best content in the world that we've probably ever had. Like, I have the Bible in my pocket, in my phone, the Catechism, Father Mike Schmitz, Bishop Barron. Like, if you want to learn about the faith, you have every opportunity to learn about the faith. We have phenomenal programs, but we don't understand what they're for and why we do them. So I think that one of the plagues of many of our parishes is that we actually do more than we should, and we do it poorly, and we don't know why we do it, or we can't connect it to our central mission. So as we build out a parish path of discipleship, we're trying to help people encounter Jesus or grow in that relationship. If we never move people along that pathway, right? So we do a lot of growing deeper in our faith as parishes. We never help grow people in their readiness for mission to evangelize. So it doesn't, so there are, I think every pastor that I talk to is wrestling with what are the things we should be doing, what are the things that distract us from doing the main thing. But sometimes those things pay the bills too, right? Like, sometimes a parish picnic can pay for like 2 staff positions with the proceeds it makes for the year or whatever, right? So it's not a question of like, okay, should we get rid of it? Okay, maybe how do we leverage it and use it? And I think that one of the reasons we don't, that some of the things have gone away over the years, and And there's different programs ebb and flow, and there's a time, and I think it is a lot about discernment of what is needed most right now. But I think that we don't have, again, this is not a shot at anyone here in the room, myself included, but I don't think we have well-formed leaders who have an understanding of mission and evangelization, which is why we're really all throughout the diocese creating programs, talking about it, training the pastors to train their people. I can come in and do this, but I am one person, and there's 135 parishes still in the Archdiocese. So I'm going to be better off training the priests to do it with their own people, because really, to be well-formed for evangelization, it's a day-in, day-out discipleship walk. So it's not just about what we do, it's about how and why we do it. And that requires the investment of the leaders of the parish, ministry leaders, parish leaders, staff, having a unified vision, helping other people understand why the things we're doing and where they fit on that paradigm. So it's not always do more, but it's do the right things and do them better sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
My question is just, you said 3 things, and I only got 2 of them down. One was, what is God doing in your life? What does God have a plan for you? What was the other thing you said?
Does anyone remember?
Are you on that plan, or how are you?
Yeah, are you following? Yeah, where do you see, where do you see God moving in your life? Are you on that plan? What could you do to follow God's plan? I think was the third one.
Okay, thank you.
Any small steps you could take?
I think when you went to the Baptist egg hunt, you were in a spot at right that moment that you needed support. And you didn't know it, maybe.
Right.
But they did, okay? That they were just passing it around as a gift to everybody who came. But on a different day, at a different time, if that many people were coming at me, we're Baptists, we're here, we love you, and knowing how I feel about my own faith, I would have taken a huge step back and maybe missed the Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, sure.
Because if you're that intent about your own faith, then you will, I don't feel like you'll be dissuaded. And right or wrong, I have a lot of godchildren, and they are not going to church. And so when I call them together, some of them are brothers and sisters, and say, we're gonna have you over for dinner, or we'd like to take you for breakfast or something when they're all in town. And we just sit around and gently, maybe too gently,
Sure.
I say, so how is your faith journey going? And the first time I did it, they were just wide-eyed and like, what?
Leave me alone. Yeah.
But they each went around the table and told of things that they were doing in their life that I felt had that hint, that they knew where I was coming from and they knew where they wanted to be. They just weren't at that moment yet. And I don't know how we get them back.
Sure.
But the young people, they just have their own way, and if you don't go with them, then you lose your family. Now, not so in mine, but, I can only do this so often with these godchildren.
Right.
And then they won't even want to come to breakfast or dinner.
Yeah, I think of St. Augustine a lot, who was intellectually convinced that the Catholic faith was true for probably a couple of years before he actually converted in his heart, right? So he had done all the reading, he had done all the, he knew that it was true, but he wasn't ready yet, right? You guys all know the famous prayer of St. Augustine, right? Lord, give me chastity, but not yet. These things he knew and he wasn't ready to do. And what changed on that one day where he had his conversion? I don't know. I mean, what changed was the Holy Spirit within him and an openness. So I hear what you're saying, and you're right, but I think that this is where having it kind of in our DNA a little bit better as Catholics, if it's just the nagging parent, aunt, godparent, mother, father, whatever, and they get it every once in a while, and they hear it every once in a while, it's easier to brush off, right? But if as Catholics, it's woven into who we are more than when they're at. Again, this is a challenge I give to pastors and priests too. Like, is your Easter and Christmas message particularly charismatic or kerygmatic? Like, does it preach the kerygma very well? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Or do your funerals, right? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. So I think at every level of the church, we have to get better at just proclaiming the message, and sometimes we proclaim it through question, and sometimes it's through proclamation. But I think you're right in that just telling people why they're wrong or what they're doing wrong is only going to drive them further away oftentimes. And yet at the same time, there are moments where that also works too. Sometimes that sign on the street corner that tells someone they're going to hell gets them to change their life. So you never know. I laugh. We live across the street. My kids had a lot of tardies for school last year. It's right there. They shouldn't be late. And my oldest is in 8th grade, my second is 6th grade, and so we're getting ready to look at high schools and stuff. My wife teaches at Vianney, so I have 3 boys. I think we know where they're going. I think they'll get in. But at the beginning of the year, we had this guilt trip this year, and my wife laid it on thick. She's like, guys, high schools look at your transcripts. They look at how tardy you are. They look at whether or not you're responsible. And if you want to get into a good school, you better start showing up on time. And she kind of laid it on more harsh than that, right? And my 6th grader was in a heap on the floor in tears. And I was like, gosh, you are mean. You are terrible. I'll tell you what, those kids have not been late once this year. They took it on themselves because in that moment they needed the tough love. So evangelization is like parenting in a lot of ways, where sometimes the moment where you have to go and put your arm around someone and encourage them. And the same kids sometimes need to be kicked in the butt and punished because that's how they're going to get their attention too. So it really is, that's where St. Paul, that model of sharing the gospel and life in Thessalonians, he says elsewhere, he says, when you were ready for milk, I gave you milk, and when you needed solid food, I gave you solid food. And it's by being there, being in relationship, and sharing your very self that you know when to push and when to pull on some of those things too. But consistency and repetition is a big part of it, I think, too.
Are there any programs in the Archdiocese for the single 20, 30-year-old?
Yeah, so we've had, I started my career at the Archdiocese 12 years ago in young adult ministry. We've done a lot over the years. So if you go, there's stlyoungadults.com has been on there. And there's actually, part of All Things New, we're revamping a lot of that ministry. So there's a committee meeting right now to figure out what so again, looking at cast wide, so how do we reach people on maybe just social level and connect them, and then help them go deeper in their faith as well. So we're trying to create that kind of sales funnel almost approach of how do you find someone very wide and then help them go deeper and figure it out. So there are things out there like that. I'll give you a business card I can connect you on some of the websites and stuff that exist too. So yeah. What else?
I'm from a different parish.
We'll let you stay.
Everybody here tonight, with the exception, I think, of one young lady, is all probably retired. And the people that should be here are younger.
Sure.
And we'd probably spend our time better tonight going babysitting at their house and have them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's a great, and I say this not to pick on you or be rude or mean, but did you bring them with you? People? And, sometimes the answer is I tried, and sometimes the answer is, well, I assumed that they wouldn't come, or they were busy, or I sent them a flyer, Gosh, we vastly overestimate the power of the bulletin and emails and flyers, as Catholics. We have this big digital sign out front of our parish. It doesn't do anything other than keep my kids up at night because it's bright. The walls, the color of my wall changes. We have to do those things. Again, it's reinforcement, right, of the message. But unless we're really invested in people's lives, and then I say, come with me to this because I love you and I care for you. It's not just sending it to them, it's really having the relationship enough to really invite them and have them come too. So it requires sacrifice. That's not an easy thing to do either. My colleague Dave Baranowski works in the stewardship office and works on evangelization stuff with me. Dave's the best evangelist I know. He worked for 30-something years at Anheuser-Busch. He was the director of packaging. He was moving up the chain at AB when all the buyout stuff happened. And I think sometimes it's because of that corporate life and past life, and that gives him credibility to speak to people about the conversion that he had after his mom died when he was in his mid to late 40s. He said, I was just sad and I was looking for something. And I met Jesus for the first time at the 12th station of the cross on a silent retreat. It wasn't this big, powerful proclamation. It was something different. There had been other proclamations along the way. But his pastor invited him on that retreat. He didn't just, he came to his pastor and said, I'm sad. His pastor said, walked with him, talked with him a little bit, and said, I want you to do this. And Dave said yes. Well, now Dave, his personal mission in life is to get his kids back in the church and practicing the faith. So he goes, he's got his one nephew and his son and another guy, and they meet for lunch every other week. And Dave is just committed to asking meaningful questions at lunch. He's not beating him over the head with it, but he's just going out, spending the time, but trying to talk about things that matter, right? And just kind of being skilled in the art of humanity and leading the conversations where they need to go. It's like that Stephen Covey principle, right? Begin with the end in mind, from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We know what the end is. The end is we want to invite people to Jesus, to know Jesus. So as I'm building those relationships, I'm not using people just to get into church. I'm doing it for their own good. But do I have that a little bit of boldness, holy boldness, to build the relationships and then make the ask on those things too?
As a Protestant who came into the church, to the RCI program, I don't feel like I was a bad person for being a Presbyterian.
Yeah, we'll ask around. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
I think one of the things that we have to do is recognize that our goal needs to get, right now, I'd be really happy if our kids went back to church at some point.
Church, period. Yeah.
Period. And I would like them to maybe decide that you could come back to the Catholic Church. But we have to be very careful about being judgmental about this. People, you said we want to come and love Jesus. I think that is the message we need, is to get people to go to church and be Christian to start with.
Yeah, we have more in common with Protestants than we don't, right? Than those non-Catholics. And you hear a lot of Catholics who go to those churches and they say, I finally found Jesus, or I finally feel fed. Mm-hmm. Well, praise the Lord. Like, I'm sad that they didn't find it in the Catholic Church, because it should be our personal mission to make sure they can find out that in the Catholic Church too. So let's pray for them to come back and ask them questions about what they missed. But yeah, I don't think that they're the target or the enemy. Again, we just did our October mass counts for this year. And we don't have the numbers in quite yet, but last year, post-COVID, mass attendance has leveled off around 20% of Catholics attend mass. There's your low-hanging fruit, right? Like, people who we know, who used to be here, who either intentionally left to go somewhere else, or intentionally stopped coming anywhere, or they slowly drifted away because it didn't mean much to them. But these are people that our kids, you sent your kids to school with, or people who you have connections to their life to be in a relationship with them. They're around our parishes, even if they're not in our parishes. So how do we reach them? How do we go find them? How do we come alongside them and take them out to lunch? And you don't have to go for the jugular on conversation number 1, but how do you start meaningful questions to help them search within themselves? Because when we get people to ask questions as Catholics, we have the best answers. We have all the best answers. We know where to look. And just because you are afraid you're not going to know the answer to a question doesn't mean, it shouldn't stop you from helping someone ask the questions. We can always go find that answer along the way too. But yeah, it's a great point. Sure.
At the C conference last year, they were saying that there was an evangelization program for parishes, that they were basically you could buy it either as a package or individual.
Yeah, so upcoming, for those that don't know, there's a big conference that's going to be here in January called SEEK. It's run by Focus, which is the Fellowship of Catholic University Students. I'm slightly biased, like I said, because I was a missionary with them for 4 years. There'll be like about 20 to 25,000 people here in St. Louis, Mass down in the dome where JP2 had Mass, like the altar that St. John Paul II used when he was here as well. A large portion of that conference is college students and the missionary staff. But about a quarter of the people there are going to be non-college students who are there for evangelization training called the Making Missionary Disciples track. So they have talks from experts around the country in evangelization who are doing trainings similar to this, but also giving you practical skills of how to lead a Bible study, how to lead a small group, practical tips for what it looks like to do that day in, day out walk with someone, how to ask those meaningful questions, how to be prepared to give a reason for the hope that's within you, right? So they have that'll be here in January 1st through the 5th. Parish packs are on sale. It's buy 5, get 1 free, and you get an extra $250 off if you're from St. Louis, if your parish is from St. Louis. So the price goes up on that on Friday, so tomorrow is the deadline for the early bird registration for that. And if your parish wants to buy a pack, you don't have to know who's going yet. So you can buy the pack and then submit the names for it later. So it's if you go to archstl.org/seek, it's all on there.
Weren't they also going to have a program that you could use as a small group?
Yeah, so they have, Focus has, all their Bible studies are free and online. And they have kind of specific training for how to lead a Bible study and how to lead small group programs in your parish after the conference as well. So, and then we'll be doing stuff to follow up on that again this year. Yeah.
Does that be helpful for?
Yep. Yeah, and again, like I could, recommend for any of you 6 different small group Bible study programs that would be great to lead in a parish. The problem is most parishes aren't going to lead it in a way. I know a lady who, she's been in the same small group for 35 years. Okay, that's great, but who have you evangelized? Has it grown? The answer was no. It's been my comfortable little group of people we're on our walk together. Okay, have those people, but all of those people should also be out on mission starting a new group and finding new people. So it's not that it's bad, it's just maybe incomplete of what its mission should be to go out and grow as well. So it's putting those programs in the hands of people who can have that kind of growth mindset to bring people to Jesus. Yes, in the back.
Can I come up there and talk?
Yeah, sure.
Not afraid.
But we should be. Uh-oh.
Thank you, Brian. My name is John O'Toole. I've been in the parish for a long time, since 1997. I've been a Catholic all my life, for 59 years, and I will say that this is the first time in my life that I've heard the call from the church to be evangelists to other people, not just to our own family, not just to our neighbors, not just to our community, not just to our church, but to the whole world around us. And to me, that's something that I've been waiting for a long time in my life. As a young man, I went into the seminary, and I sought out to be a missionary. I went into the Redemptorists, and they said, first you have to go through 9 years of formation. And 9 years of formation was just too much for a young man who really wanted to go right now. Right now, I think that this is the time where the church has an opportunity, more than ever, when we see what's happening in our world around us. We're at an age, we're the ones ruling the world. And if we're ruling the world with God in charge within our lives, we have an opportunity to set this world on fire with God's love. And if we're not doing it, then who's doing it? We as a Catholic Church have more people in this world to set this world on fire. And if we're not doing that, then what are we doing? We want our kids to go to heaven. We want them, that's first and foremost. We want our spouses to go to heaven. That's also first on our priority list. And one thing that I have to say is, why now? Why is the church asking us to do this now? Why didn't they ask us to do this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago? Why today? Why are you here? I'm glad you're here, by the way. I think it's very important. But what I really need the church to know, and I need this as a message, if we want people to be invited to our parish, to come to our church, to come to our Mass, how come we are not courageous to do that? I'm not saying we, I say me. And if we can be courageous enough to bring people into our pews and to say, come to our church, I think it starts with our pastors to evangelize us, because we don't know how. I think we haven't been taught how, and it's something that hasn't gone on for as long as I've lived. And now I'm like, okay, I want to evangelize. I want to know how this is done. And you gave a great story about the Baptist church and how they were trying to evangelize you. If we need to be at that point, we need real evangelists to come in, like yourself, to tell us how this is done and how can we go about to do that. How can we set this world on fire? That's all we have to say.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's maybe a quick thing too. There's individual, there's institutional, right? So institutional, we've got to get a lot better at understanding our identity and how we can be a community that we go out and invite someone. What are we inviting them to? You're going to invite them to Mass. Mass is super confusing for someone who doesn't know what it is or love Jesus, right? And you only receive the grace at Mass that you're disposed to receive through confession and opening yourself up to that, right? So just bring someone to Mass, if they're not disposed to receive the graces of the Mass, isn't going to do the job. So individually, we have to go out and proclaim and invite and ask questions and all those things, but then institutionally, we have to reform ourselves as well to create spaces for people to ask questions and to build relationships and seek for truth and seek for meaning in their lives. So we'll end there. And just to say that anything worth doing is worth doing poorly to start with, right? So go fail. Because if you're not failing, you're not trying. Because I fail all the time as an evangelist. So go fail, and it's a great way to end, isn't it? Go be bad evangelists. But it means you're trying. So maybe let's just end in a quick prayer. We can let Dan kind of wrap us up here as well. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord Jesus, we love you. And we just thank you for the gift of faith that you've poured into our hearts. Continue to reveal to us what you're doing in our lives, what you have done in our lives for us. And the more we realize that, Lord, the more we can't help but want to give that gift away, that gift of faith. Help us to share with others, Lord. Help us to be receptive to your Holy Spirit, to be attentive to where you are leading us and giving us the grace to speak your name. We pray this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, guys.